All right, we're live. Mike Halpin, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, welcome to Constantly Varied Conversations. I don't have a good intro for the show, man. I've been doing kettlebells and cocktails forever, and I've got one for that. I
Am
don't
I
really
Nikki
have
in
one.
this case, or
Yeah,
or
well,
how do we do this? Do I need a drink? Yeah,
well,
I
maybe.
should
I'm
have it
not
here.
drinking. I
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, I'm sober these days. I will tell you this though, for anyone who gives a rat's ass about sobriety, I find that drinking in the evenings is more about sensation than alcohol.
Hmm,
That makes sense. Like there's that
it
dopamine
does.
release you get from the experience. Smokers talk about this. You ever hear a smoker talk about like there's
Mm-hmm.
the process of smoking and that's what keeps them going? Well, I'm finding that alcohol is kind of the same way. And so now, if I like right now, I'm drinking soda water, lemon lime soda water. And I find that if I put it in a rocks glass with ice,
Oh,
it's
fancy.
the same sensation as having a tequila on the rocks or, vodka
Okay.
tonic or whatever. And it doesn't have exactly the same sensation, but you get that, like, you get the experience, and it's calming. I like it.
Yeah, well. We'll get into what we're getting into, but I know you're a football fan too, I believe, or at least you're in Cleveland. So, I'm
Well,
down in Cincinnati, so we didn't have a great day yesterday. But I did see your stories about drinking NA beers while you were watching, and I thought that might be a better idea than
yeah,
drinking
well,
my cares away about the Bengals.
it's the only thing can keep you from crying when you're watching the Browns. They had a rough day against the Cowboys yesterday. I kept thinking
Yeah.
of, that's Tommy's team, and I kept thinking he was probably just living his best life, and I'm sitting there drinking fake beer and watching the Browns just get pummeled to one. I finally just gave it up and, and went to Target and did some shopping. It's like,
Oh, there you go.
yeah, it's like enough of this crap. So it is what it is. Hey, we got our first person in the chat. CrossFit says bad day for pro football in Ohio, and I fully agree with
Oof.
that. So,
There
all
we
right.
go.
Well, let me introduce you to the crowd. For those that don't know Mike, Mike is a contractor writer for Morning Chalk Up, runs a page called Known and Knowable. If you guys do not follow it on Instagram, you should. There's also obviously a .com page that goes with it. And he focuses on highlighting athletes and making the sport of fitness more known for athletes. Been in CrossFit for 4 years, has his L1, and coaches at my favorite gym in
Oh,
Cincinnati, CrossFit Fairfield, with Keith Knapp, our good buddy. So,
he's an amazing man. He's really helped over the last year or two with even my learning CrossFit. And yeah, and he gave me a shot. I had my L1, and I just coach. It's not like every day. I'm not doing the 5 a.m.s or anything like that, but it's a couple days a week. So yeah,
good.
happy to help him out and be with that community. It's a great
Uh,
growing community down there in Fairfield. So
Well, I was going to ask,
good
how's it
time.
work? I know it's new. I went down for the grand opening not that long ago,
Yeah,
and it's a beautiful gym. And obviously, love Keith to death. How's the gym going?
good, good. We're going to do a 9/11 piece on Saturday morning with the community. We do some free community classes at 9 a.m. If randomly you're on here and you don't know about CrossFit Fairfield and you're in the Cincinnati area, feel free to come by. And then yeah, we do cap programming. So I do have insights into that. I enjoy it from time to time. And then yeah, growing community. I got to see somebody do their first pull up just last week. Somebody else hit a deadlift PR. So it's those are the amazing moments. I know you know that being an affiliate owner. I think those are the things that sort of warm our hearts in CrossFit, especially when maybe we have conversations like this or just some hubbub about other things. Is like we still get to be with our community, be with the friends, help them be better people. So,
New gyms and new members are the best, and
hmm
particularly because you see a lot of PRs.
red
I remember
eyes. Yeah,
when I went to CrossFit Mentality, I trained there for a year with Scott Panchek and his
yeah, that's
family.
right. Yeah,
And in those days, the twins were still there coaching, and they have a big PR bell on the wall. It's huge.
that's
And
cool.
anytime you hit a PR, you have to go ring it. And man, it's a moment. Like it is a cool. Like
hmm
I rung it twice in the time I was there, and the entire gym loses their mind. It doesn't matter who does
That's
it and
great.
what it's for.
Yeah.
Like if you're ringing that bell, everybody's cheering. And for me, that's always been the spirit of why affiliates are so cool, because you see people making these strides in their everyday life that, like, you don't get to ring a PR bell at work. Nobody gives a shit if you fixed Excel.
No.
You know
How
what I
many
mean?
emails you send in a day, huh?
Yeah, I don't care about this stuff, but it's just like really cool to see somebody do something they never
hmm
thought they could do before. Like one of mine was a muscle up. I thought I would never get at one, and
Oh, yeah.
And
that's cool.
Saxon taught me in literally in
Oh
like
wow, well
2
there you go.
minutes.
It's a good teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. And to be able to run over and ring that bell afterwards was like a really amazing moment.
Oh
I'll
man.
literally never forget it. It's the best.
Hmm.
It is the
Yeah,
best.
exactly. Well, it's double unders was it for me. Same sort of thing. It's just one of those where it clicks, and then all of a sudden, I've learned how to do it, and then I've taught somebody else how to do it, and you just see the moment of realization come over them. Yeah, it's great.
It's good stuff. I'm glad you're doing it, man. I'm going to get back down there. Actually, I'm going to be in
Mm.
town October 5th. My youngest turns
Oh, cool.
21, and I'm taking her down. She'll be drinking. I will not. So I'll come work out while
Wow.
she's
Oh, she
recovering.
turns 21. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Well,
don't get me wrong.
good
She's
luck.
already drinking. Like, she got a fake ID. She'll be drinking legally when I'm there. So I'm coming
Mm-hmm.
down for
Mm-hmm.
a Cincinnati football club
Haircuts.
game. No, the football
Oh,
club,
yeah.
the
FC.
soccer
Yeah,
team.
FC Cincinnati. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And going to take them to dinner, and then I'll have some free time. So I'll come out and work out with you guys. It'll be good times.
Perfect. Yeah.
All right.
Love
Well,
it.
let's jump in. For everyone joining, we
Yeah.
appreciate you guys being here. Halpin's blown me off for the show a couple of times prior to all the events of the
I can't
games.
defend that.
Well, I might we were going to get together prior to the games and like talk
Yeah.
about the lead up to the games, and then it didn't
Mm-hmm.
work out, which was fine. And then we reconnected a week or so ago, and I've really admired is probably the best word to use here, what you've done with the
Thank you.
timeline, because I'm much like you. I'm kind of a stat nerd, and I like things to be accurate and tidy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really appreciated that you did it. And when you reached back out, I thought that's a great idea to have an opportunity to talk about the timeline to the community, because I think often we lose enough time in the day to really get into the details of things. Like we catch the highlights and we form opinions
Mm-hmm.
without like the full understanding. And I think your timeline for the lake event is really eye-opening in some areas. And I even reread it today, but it's probably the fifth
Oh,
time I've
cool.
read it. And even rereading it for the fifth
Thank
time,
you.
it brings up emotions, just like the interpersonal
Mm-hmm.
stories of the people that were there. So I think it's important to share what it was like. So I appreciate you coming on to do so. So let's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. And
let's
it
just
took a
jump in.
lot. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, intro stuff. And then, yeah, maybe just what you're speaking to. Like, I don't know if I clicked on a link and then all of a sudden it looked like it literally in Google Docs, it's like 50
Right.
pages. So, like, if I clicked on a link and then I read like four things and then was like, okay, I don't have time for this. I'm gonna get off
Right.
the toilet now, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, then I might not come back to it. So yeah, that's not to use your platform in any way, but it was just sort of I've gotten a lot of questions about different things. Even things have come up since last about a week ago when the article came out. Um, Thankful for the people, heartbroken for the people that were there, but sharing their stories a little bit more. It does help tie a few things together that are still in there. Obviously, Luca shared his post last week, which also tied in a few things from the article. So there's pieces there. There's an intro that's in there if you want to pull it up, because I'll start talking through that. This is not, and this is an important thing I've seen from a few people. This is not the investigation. This is not trying to supersede or undercut or like jump out in front of the investigation that CrossFit is putting on with, I believe, Peter Edge, and I don't recall the name of his company off
Yep.
the top of my head. But I I'm an optimist. I believe that that investigation will go through. I've worked in government spaces before. Those investigator folks know what they're doing. So like I have all optimism that they will get to the bottom of whatever led up to whatever happened, whatever happened after the fact. I'm not trying to get in their way. I have actually shared everything that's here with the investigators. Um, I might stop short of that statement, but and then have offered that out to others to review it. I am keeping that a little bit close to the vest because there's just
Yeah, of course.
stories and things that I'm getting sent that I don't necessarily ever want to see the light of day, but they should be reviewed by the right people to make sure that everything's being thoroughly reviewed.
As you continue to get
Investigate,
stories or
yeah.
people reaching out to you, you're going to continue to update the timeline with new information as you get it, or what's your plans with that?
We've gotten a few things. Obviously, Lucas Peace does fill in a gap around a conversation that is even spoken about in here, that it obviously then says Lucas' version of that conversation. There have been a few videos that back up things that occur in there where I only had like a written statement, but now suddenly I have a video of somebody that says, I was there, I saw that happen, here it is. And then, so there's things that, and then there are still people that were there that are reaching out to me and would like to share their story to see if it helps in any way. So I have a few of those set up. Depending on what it is, I'd work with the editors. This is on, and this might be confusion for some because they've obviously seen Morning Chalk Up share it, but it's on my website. I'll say a few reasons for that. One, it's 50 pages long. You've been to most news websites. No offense to Morning Chalk Up, and I love the folks over there. There would be an ad every 5 seconds on this, which would then mess up maybe the formatting and things like that. And then it just doesn't drive the right message, honestly. So
Yeah.
I had already stood up my website before the games. There's no ads on this website. There's no monetization. The same with my Instagram. There's no ads. There's no monetization. I'm just not maybe honestly big enough yet. Not, I don't know that I actually want to be. So that is where it has come up in other people's articles or other people's videos or things like that is, hey, are you trying to make a play here or whatever else? No. And I did put a lengthy comment on my post about this that goes into that if anybody's interested, and DM me if you're interested in that part of
So
it. Um,
let me ask you a question as we're
so
jumping in.
yeah, go ahead.
One thing that jumped out at me when I read this, I thought it was really interesting to me, and I've heard before, but like your perspective on it, is you have in the written comments that everyone describes this as a feeling of time warp, meaning like when there's a tragic or um, a moment that happens that's catastrophic to everyone, events get jumbled in their mind.
Right.
And it makes it really, and time becomes a really weird concept for people. Can you explain what some of those conversations were people like? You said the whole concept of time got distorted in general. Like what was that meaning to the people you were
Yeah,
talking to?
and where it sort of pinpointed it was Max El Hodge and Travis and Perrin talking about that on the Training Think Tank podcast. Is they sort of spoke to this as like there's moments from that day where I could say where I was and who I was with, but I have no idea what time it was. I have no idea how long I was there. I remember going out to dinner. I don't know if I could go around the table right now and tell you everybody that was there and even what maybe I had to eat. So it's things like that where then if you do have a statement that comes back, like, and we'll maybe talk about some of these, like Shanna Medeiros is Justin's mom
Yep.
is gave a statement that's in here. You have things where like she's saying it was around this time they were at the dock, and then it jumps to her talking to Justin, and then it jumps to her talking to somebody in leadership that gave her an answer about that, and then she left. Well, you could read that within 5 minutes, like this whole statement from top to bottom, less than 5 minutes. Well, that's 30 minutes of time that's
Sure.
going on. So if you try to put it in with a timeline, so it's like, I think it's called like the fog of war or something like that.
Right.
Well, the most well known in my time, and I'm maybe aging, don't want to age you differently, but like 9/11 is coming up obviously in 2 days. I remember where I was when I turned on the TV. It was my first day of college, actually, or it was supposed to be. I went to Wright State, which is at Wright Pat. We heard sonic booms going on, so
Right.
I can think and recall things that happened during that day. If you ask me what time it was, I don't really remember beyond like obviously when it was happening. Like it was
So for
morning,
this, how did you
and then
reconstruct
like
the
if you ask me like who
timeline?
was there or stuff I interacted with that day, I wouldn't know.
Right. Well, how
Yeah.
are you constructing the timeline then? Are you using like video footage to go back and look at the
hmm
timestamps? Like, where are you pulling it from?
Yeah. So I like these leading questions that you have. The majority of the footage is from a first person perspective in that I was there as invited media, and we had this, and there's a few of us that had this enhanced access. I'm not trying to
Yep.
like say who had what, but like I was planning. I'm a very analytical person. I'll just say in short, the broadcast doesn't show things very well to then go back and watch them later. If
Yeah.
Tia's winning, you're going to see Tia winning for a good 5 minutes of a 10-minute workout, and you're not going to
Yeah.
know who was in second place.
Yeah, we
So
know that.
I brought a 360 camera that was able to then show like a full, 360 view setup. And the lake was the dry run for how that was supposed to work, because then I was going to take it to Dickey's Arena, set it up with sort of a vantage point that allowed me to see the entire field of play. This was all approved and reviewed by CrossFit folks. And then be able to look back on any of those events and be able to say, hey, in this round, Jason passed Dallin doing burpees or something like that. I just made that up, but they were racing each other in that event. I know. So, so that's why I had the camera. That's actually why I brought it to the lake, even though at the lake it was basically just facing the finish line. So I have about 30 minutes of video that is a full 360 view with audio. It's 8K, so there's a lot of zoomed in pictures. A lot of the pictures within here, if they look blurry, it's because I zoomed them all the way in to be able to see that. And that's the basis of a lot of this. In addition to that basis is just backgrounds that are available through FOIA requests that we did. And I realized that there's some European and non-US folks that have read the article and things like that. So FOIA is Freedom of Information Act. It means that citizens of the country are basically able to go ask the government for documents, and those need to be released. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not, that's as far maybe I'll be able to say about it. But so there's permits, there's contracts, there's it's all in the appendix down at the bottom, but there's insurance pieces, there's a few things. What's not in there, which I know I've gotten a lot of questions about, the emergency action plan. The emergency action plan is not within those documents. That would be something that I think a lot of people are asking about and wanting to see. But and then the other piece is my relationship to the Morning Chalk Up. So I have been a contract writer working with them since 2022, and they were receiving statements from the Medeiros family, as well as a few others they were receiving. And so the volunteers or people that come up here that are anonymous, those were happening through either people reaching out to me or people reaching out to the Morning Chalk Up. So that then builds all that. And then the backbone really of structuring this is with that sort of fog of war, that sort of time warp piece, is locking it to something that we all know and something that I know very well. And just, I don't write in these like long investigative articles. Usually I write a lot of stats that are just sort of like, well, here's the leaderboard and here's all their times. So that's the center sort of column here of the entire article is Yellow Hosta finishing, and then this happens, and then Brent finishes, and so on and so on. So,
and interestingly enough, you're probably having you there at the enhanced press access likely gave us the clearest vision of what happened, knowing how analytical and nerdy you are. I say that like,
wow, that's so nice of you.
No, I say that with complete love. It was interesting. So someone asked in the comments, like, what your deal with CrossFit was. You had an enhanced press access. They offered me the same access. And all that means for anyone listening is you can bring cameras in and you get closer to the field, basically.
Yeah.
And you'll have to,
funny story
obviously,
there.
Yeah, go ahead.
I raised my hand in the media meeting on Wednesday, I think it was, or I don't know what our exact meeting was. And I honestly asked them, hey, is there an option if I believe I'm sitting too close? Because most everyone is, and this is how nerdy and analytical I am, most everybody's like, I need my camera closer, I need my videos closer, I need to be able to see them sweating and all of these sorts of things to get these amazing images that people post. And like Savon's behind the scenes or Buttery Bros or other people, like those are the types of access that they want, right? I was like, is there a press box, or am able to see like the full field of play? Because like I don't need to be sitting like this, well, here's the camera, this close to everybody to be able to say like, hey, this person passed this person. So it is an interesting thing. I gave some notes to the media group over there of like, hey, there's more than just camera access and things like that. So yeah, it was exactly that. And so
Well,
wish you were
I
there,
had
John.
talked to them before.
Yeah.
I talked to them before and was chatting with Jenna about who was coming and who
Mhm.
had access. And she mentioned you, and she goes,
Yeah,
"We
she's
love
great.
Mike. He asked us for the most bizarre things." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, he was asking us for like measurements of the athletes, so he could do an
Yes. Oh,
analysis of, the squat ratios and how fast they come out of squats." And I'm like, "That is exactly who Mike is." It's like she had you
yeah.
pegged. And so when I found out you had done this, I'm like, this is so in your wheelhouse because you are really, really good at keying in on specifics and not letting emotion rule what you're seeing. And so I appreciate that you put this together for us. Um, Walk us
Yeah,
through some of it.
I just want people to this maybe to be documented. I had asked, "Hey, is anyone able to do like an official weigh-in during the check-in and
Right.
like height measurements?" Because then you could do the power equation that's done in like the L1 where it's like force times distance over time, and you have to know how much something weighs to be able to say how quickly they can move mass over distance. So that went actually pretty far before they decided that they
Yep.
couldn't insert me into the check-in process. But then the other one was this whole 360 video thing.
Yep.
So sorry, we can nerd out at another time.
Yeah, yeah. So let's
Go
jump in. So
ahead.
I want to start with right at the very beginning. So you got there at 6 a.m. Walk us through kind of that first, the first part of the day. Obviously, like I kind of get caught up right at the 6:30 piece when athletes are coming in and getting the initial kickoff to the day and being told what's going to happen. What was that part of the experience like?
Yeah, so we had gotten there like 6 a.m. This is myself and my photographer. We had also been working closely with Brian Friend and with his group, so we were actually staying together. So we got there like at 6 a.m. or so. The athletes were already warming up by the time we were there. It was sort of like bulls just in like a corral. They were all just like running in circles and warming
Right.
up with a big crowd around them. So that was kind of cool to see. So that's that first picture of Lazar. I was taking any of these pictures shown unless I specifically note them or they're from some other place, they're me. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but like some of them are terrible, blurry and stuff like that. So that might actually show that they're mine. So this what you're seeing now is that at 6:35 or so in the morning, the route for the swim was adjusted, and I have this backed up both by just photo, and then story from Brent Fikowski, as well as a few other athletes that have sent me just background and pictures and things like that. They were given a briefing the day before, I believe. In that briefing, they were told to keep their left shoulder, the buoys to their left shoulder in the morning of the event, and obviously I have it from my perspective and as well as some athletes, but in the morning of the event, yeah, that's a perfect picture right where your mouse
So
is there.
these
They were
yellow circles are the
yeah.
buoys.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this is an approximate view. So Brent gives a reason. The reason makes sense to me, but I mean anybody can sort of read what's here is if you were to keep those buoys to your left shoulder, so that would mean like you would go to the left of that first buoy after the entrance, it would actually force you to go well further than 800 meters. And so that's the thought process around possibly why they changed it to you just need to swim from dock to dock in whatever wherever you want to go is fine. Um, is that if they forced you to steer around certain buoys or anything like that, it would actually force you to go further. So just some again stats here is my thing, but in working in conversations with Brent, the distance if you just did a straight line, which is what's shown on this graphic here, if you just did a straight line to where that sort of peninsula is, and then a straight line from there, that would be 864 meters. The swim was stated to be 800 meters. Now in CrossFit, is a 5K ever really a 5K,
Right.
and is anything really anything? It's all just sort of hey, the I think the response is usually like, well, they all did the same thing, so does it really matter? And so in this case, it was just straight line to straight line. It was 64 more meters than what was stated. And then as far as athletes, I do have Brent and I do have another athlete. Both did very well in this event. both were around 890
So,
meters.
question: has anyone said why the last minute change? I mean, they had weeks, months to plan for these events. There's no way this was a last minute event planning by Dave or anyone else for that matter. So why the day before all of a sudden we're,
Yeah, so there was
you know,
athletes that were there, and even and this is the thing that people have brought up. Lazar even did this event without any buoys, without anything. And so there was conversations that were occurring where people were going out on even Wednesday. They may not have swam the whole event on the day before the event, but they were going out even Wednesday to just get a sense of it and work around. There was no buoys out there the day before. So I don't know when exactly the setup occurred. What I can also say, and again, this is my perspective of things just based on conversations and things I've had. So this goes into a little opinion here versus sort of objective review. But there's also a teams event that was supposed to kick off right after the individual event. The teams event, I believe they were going to go well further than 1,000 meters. So it could be seen that the buoys were then set up in this pattern or close to this pattern to associate itself with the teams event, and that they sort of met in the middle when it came to, hey, the individuals just need to swim from the entrance to the exit.
okay.
And so this next one, and this is where it does get into um, the permits and things like that. This is actually from CrossFit's permit submission. So it does follow along, and visually what we saw does come close to what was originally in the permit for them. Um, there was an orange buoy at the beginning and the end. There's not an orange buoy on that peninsula corner there, or whatever that is. But there were 4 yellow buoys in
All right.
between that
So,
were
so I'm
in
clear.
that.
This map B that we're looking at now, this was the
Mhm.
original permit that they submitted that it was supposed to be, and then this is what it actually was in map A. Is that correct?
Yeah, approximate. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I'm doing that off of what I could see in the morning, and then also the Buttery Bros put out a documentary about Lazar and about the event and sort of about the games, and they had, well, if you keep scrolling, you're gonna get there. But like, there's a very good visual where you can see from end to end of the lake, where you can sort of make out where they are.
So a little bit of a side question, but have you talked to anyone that was on the demo team that would have swam this? Was that a possibility that it got changed because of the demo team?
I've not talked to anybody on the demo team. Oh, okay. I actually do see it there in the article. It's 1,200 meters is what the teams was
Okay.
supposed to do. So well further than 800. And it was across the same lake. Obviously, we didn't see it happen, so I can't speak to it. I will say that because I have gotten a few good questions. Well, not a few good questions, but a few questions. Um, I have kept a distance from anybody, from me proactively going to somebody and saying like, "Hey, you were there. Can you tell me what occurred?" And I understand that other people are doing that.
Sure.
I don't mind it at all. That's just been my MO, is that I've done a lot of just people are coming to me. I am then strongly vetting their information based on, one, the video I have, based on other, and there's a lot of other public available sort of statements and sort of categorizing of the day that some athletes or coaches or otherwise have done. So but as far as like, have I reached out to people on the water? No. Have I reached out to people like the demo team or that? No. I have talked to a lot of people though, just in the process of
Yeah.
the run up to this, or then this being released, where people
Well, and
have
that's fair. You're
told me
not you're
different
not
things.
doing investigative journalism here. You're documenting, which is a different thing, and that's totally
Yeah,
fair.
that's a good way to say it. That could change, but I again, that gets into the investigation, and it gets into multiple investigations that I would imagine might be starting to occur. Is that there will be people that are doing more proactive outreach to people that
With
were
the
there or
enhanced press
things like
access you have, did was there an NDA involved in that? Do you know? I hope you know. If you don't,
that. There was a lot of language on or around like what I was able to capture, what I was able to do with that information. There wasn't much on saying like I worked at semifinals in Orlando in 2023. There was an NDA for that because I had behind the scenes broadcast where there's things that come up during the broadcast are just sort of proprietary. Like, it's not like they're printing like
Sure.
like things that are like that you can't know about, but like just things that would come up where it's like, hey, we don't really want somebody repeating this. So I am aware of NDAs in other cases. What I signed for media access, I wouldn't consider it that. No.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a media pass 4 or 5 times. I didn't take one for
Yeah.
this one. And everyone I've ever had says you can't announce stuff prior to the event, but there are no rules after, other than they give you a stupid limit of the number of photos you can share and the
I'm
amount of
under that
stuff you can
limit
put
for
out.
this article, if anybody asks.
All
Uh,
right. Well, good to know. All right. So what are we looking at
yeah, so
on this
this
particular
is
screen?
a Google Maps, but and the permit actually has a similar one, but this adds a few things to it just to give people sort of an idea. If they were watching the broadcast, there's obviously some pretty good drone footage of a few things. The broadcast is now no longer fully available. It's like partially available in a lot of different places. But just to give you an idea of sort of what the whereabouts of the entire sort of everything that was occurring, the whereabouts of sort of where things were. The blue dot in the middle is where my camera is. So if you see then a picture
Right.
after that, and there's just like, if you ask me like, hey, did your camera capture what was happening in the athlete tent area? No, it didn't. There's a bunch of stuff in between, but it did capture what was then in that small segment of area where the leadership was, where some of the conversations were occurring, where the head judges were that were leading people across the finish line. The finish line itself, I'll say it this way: it thankfully doesn't show one moment that I think everybody might be curious on. I don't have video of that specific moment. I am aware and have seen video, um, and so, but my camera is actually blocked by the giant Roca
Right.
arch
Okay.
that's there. So, but this is really, again, I'm sort of a visual person. This is just sort of to map out in my head, and then so the start lines at the top. One big piece of the article is the statements from the Medeiros family. So Shanna Medeiros, her daughter, and then her, I don't want to say things wrong, but I believe it's her daughter's boyfriend, Chris. That is just sort of calling out where that was, everything else.
Right.
So yeah, some of this then starts to happen pretty quick, but this is a picture of the starting line. They were lined up. The men were lined up sort of maybe 10, 20 feet in front of the women. There's a video there. I wouldn't click through it. It's probably going to take you off the page. But there's a video there of the start if you just wanted to see what the mass start looked like. And then this is a photograph that I took just thereafter. Dave was fairly close to where I was. If you look out, sorry, obviously there's some bokeh there as far as blurring in the background, but like that would be where the athletes were then running because they run basically around sort of a leg of the lake and then run out towards the other side. And then
Yep.
there's a big time jump because it's, again, perspective that I have. I've talked to different volunteers and things like that. There's not, it's the run's the run as far as anybody goes. Anybody asks. I do have some perspective of the run. There were mile markers. There was a water station around a mile and a half in, and then the sort of the only focus for anybody that was working the run side of the event was just making sure, obviously, they got from A to B, and then the swim was sort of B to C.
Okay.
Interesting thing about this area was actually, and you can see it in the next picture pretty well. This dock was actually closed to the public. I don't, all those fans there, not sure how they got there, but that area right behind it is actually a hard hat only construction area. There's a story towards the end of the article. Sorry, I was reading a comment. There's a story towards the end of the article that some of the volunteers weren't actually able to get back very quickly because the boats were being used. And the reason that they couldn't get back very quickly is that there's no way to actually, unless you walk back the 3.5 miles, there's no actual way to get from here the other way unless you start jumping fences and stuff like that.
I'm not surprised this many CrossFitters cross some border to go watch. I mean, this
we
is
all
such a
find a way,
CrossFit
right?
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
CrossFitters always find a way, so it's not surprising that they're out there. I think this is the other piece that I was surprising when I read it. I think everyone assumed, or most all of us assumed, that the people on paddle boards were all lifeguards, when in fact you've got medics and judges in 2 different color apparel out on the water.
Yeah, and that's something you see at the games all the time, right? Is that all the judges are in blue, all the medics are in red, so visually you can just sort of make that out pretty quickly. Um, I know the count of medical team people. You can see it in that picture. That screenshot is in the next sort of
Do you
picture.
have the
Is
count
That's
of
from the
both?
buddy who
How many
goes.
medics and how many judges you
Um,
had?
there's there's a judge that I can see in multiple times, and I can't tell from my vantage point who that is or how many people there are. Because I see a singular judge multiple times, and I can't tell honestly if that's one
Right.
person or then what I recall to be two people. But on the medic side, there's six medical um, team members on paddle boards. That does just my statement right there, calling them medical team members. I'm not trying to talk around. Well, maybe I am trying to talk around some words. I don't know the credentials of anybody that was on the water, regardless of what they were doing on the water. Um, I I've heard it stated. Obviously, it was in Luca's even post that it was a pointing out that they were volunteers. I will say, and we were talking about this right before the show. Um, a statement that they're paid or a statement that they're volunteers doesn't actually speak to their ability, I'll just say. So, and again, I have not really reached out to anybody that was specifically on the water. I've given a lot of space for that. If they want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to talk to them.
Well,
But
I think it's fair to
um,
comment on the volume of people that are out there, though, Mike. And like when you look at
mhm,
it and you see the number of medics and then the number of judges, I would be curious what's the distinction between
mhm,
being a medic and a judge
yeah.
and who's responsible for emergency situations. I mean, obviously, you would imagine it would be the medics. And if so, what, life-saving gear did they carry with them on these paddle boards? Do we have any of that info?
Um, visual. This is. I'll just say visually. Visually, the closest picture I could see of somebody on the medic side, I can tell that there is, from my vantage point, there is not a life-saving sort of device like a buoy or like personal sort of whatever, a ring or
Yeah,
something you would throw out to them.
yeah, no flotation
I
device.
can't see that they have a radio. I can't see that they have a whistle. And I'd have to go back and look the footage because it's been a little while, but I can't see that they're using any sort of hand communication, which would be my understanding used in lifeguarding. Where
And
and there's places that I can call out as far as like there is situations where there's a judge and a lifeguard that are seemingly next to each other. I think most people that have seen sort of the end of the event or the time that I'm talking about, you could probably picture this, or there might be a picture coming up. Um, that lifeguard has to do a few things within there, and I can't tell that they're communicating with the shore or with somebody else while
earlier
they're.
in the article, you mentioned how they were chosen for this. Could you break that down for us?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I only have this from a couple of perspectives, but they weren't asked for this is on the judging side, I'll just say, and that needs to be specified. And this is from volunteer judges. I believe all the judges are volunteers in this case. There might be, and historically, again, I don't know who's who, but historically, there's like seminar staff and stuff like that. But even in these
Sure.
cases, they're not. Um, so they were just asked if they wanted to work on the run or if they wanted to work on the swim, and there didn't look to be much then further as far as like who's actually capable on the swim side. Like, do you have CPR training? Do you have lifeguard training? Do you have anything along those lines? Now, that is not a statement about the medical team at all. Um, I'm fully aware of some of the medical people, and I've known them for a little while now, or at least conversationally known who they are and things like that. They're very qualified people. There's EMTs on those teams. There's doctors on those teams. There's things like that. I've talked with people that have been lifeguards. We're not at this event, but have been lifeguards at other CrossFit events or other CrossFit licensed events. And so I can say they use good people and things like that. So all to say, I've gotten that
Yeah,
question
it's
maybe
well,
a
it's not a
lot, but
question
like
designed.
it's
It's not
yeah.
designed to discount the medics that are in red
Mhm,
shirts, for example. I mean, like I know a lot of people in that medic. I mean, hell, my co-owner in the affiliate I own is a doctor that routinely volunteers at these things. He saved someone's life at a master's event, for God's sakes. Like, they're highly qualified.
Ah,
What we
yeah.
don't know, or at least what I don't know, is, fundamentally there is a difference between being qualified as an EMS or a MD and being water certified. I mean, those are wildly different things. And so I guess I'd just be curious, how many of these people had, lifeguard training is the simplest way I could put it. I wonder if that'll come out in the independent investigation, or if even any of them will come forward and share it. Just curiosity.
The people actually doing the investigation, CrossFit themselves and working with a third party, would obviously know who was on the water and what their qualifications were. So I only expect that that's true.
Well, the question is, will we ever find out? That's the real question. Whether that's something that will be disclosed or not. I'll be curious to see how it shakes up.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what time did they start entering the water? They entered at what time? 7:20?
I believe
Yeah.
Jeff Adler was the
7:20?
first to enter water. 20 minutes, 40 seconds is what I saw on the broadcast clock. And then it was, I think, Ricky shortly after that. And then I have this based on watching pieces of the broadcast. I don't know who entered the water next, or where actually Lazar entered the water. That wasn't shown on at least the part of the broadcast that I saw. There is a point, and people have brought this up incorrectly, I'll just say. Dave was on a jet ski while the first men entered the water. Dave then rode that jet ski directly from there, as far as I can tell, to this dock, and that's where I then take a photograph of him getting off the jet ski, and then he's at the shore the whole time, because there's people that have tried to say that he was riding around on a jet ski or something like that during all of this, and no, he wasn't. Oh, hi Taylor.
Hi Taylor. Just wanted to say hi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and again, for anything, medical's in red, judges are in blue, broadcast is in black. That's pretty normal. So that's all that picture is showing. All
right, let's move on then.
So that first picture, or actually both of these, are really sort of within the same minute of each other. This would be when Yellow Hosted was rounding the final yellow buoy, which comes into this, like, I don't know, this just leg of the water or bay area that was near the dock. One thing that's not in here that has come up, the water itself, and there's depth charts and there's whatever fish, it's like a fishing website or something like that, honestly. But the water itself goes from basically 3 feet, 0 feet, whatever it is, pretty close to where all of that grass is. And then it actually dips down to over maybe 20 feet from where the dock is to where that person is on the paddleboard. So it is a fairly deep lake. It's 40 feet if you're just looking straight out from here to where that water is behind the buoy. It can get up to like 40, 45 feet. So just for context of what this is, or how deep the water is, we've seen other events where they're in the lake and they could basically stand up whenever they want, or it's maybe 9 feet deep, something like that. It's actually 20, 25 feet deep.
Right. Question about this pontoon boat that's in the photo. Do you know if it was designed for emergency situations, or was it a media boat? I know I can see a medical team member on it, but it was also full of media. Do you know what its designation was for?
My understanding for that boat is that boat was rented by the broadcast team. I have that from conversations that I've had with a few people. That boat was rented by the broadcast team, and that's why there's broadcast people on it. I can't speak to the reason that a medical person is driving the boat. I think there was actually 2 boats. There was, because later you can see that there's 2 pontoon boats going back and forth. Again, opinion, or just sort of maybe filling in gaps here with understanding that I have. There was an understanding that the boats were also going to be bringing volunteers or other people back and forth between the team event that was supposed to occur and just the end of the events at the lake, to make sure that they're back where they would meet up to then leave and go back to Dickie's.
You have a note in this section that says there was a woman that was in distress at this
Yes.
kind of point in time of the competition. Do you know who that was? Who was in distress?
I haven't had anybody reach out to me to tell me that was
Okay.
them. And the only way I received it was from somebody that um, heard it on over the radio. So it was a radio conversation with somebody, either interacting with somebody on the boats or jet skis or whatever that might be. And then it was a question of if I withdraw from this event or the swim, am I withdrawing from the entire competition? Now
Mhm.
that statement has come up in conversations I've had with athletes. It wasn't like who this athlete was or anything like that. But from my understanding, and this is from a person that uh, I'm trying to navigate this the right way. So from my understanding, the athletes weren't briefed on if you interact with a lifeguard or a medic or a judge or something like that on a lake event, what happens? So like if you get assistance, what happens? If you get like pulled along by a jet ski, what happens? If you just stop and hold a jet ski or interact with a judge or a medical person that sort of gets in your way, what happens? Things like that. There was my understanding there was no conversation that was
So
that.
none of those
Um,
questions were answered in the athlete briefing at all for an 800-meter
I don't know
swim.
that they came up is more the way I heard it. So that I mean that could speak both ways. I don't know that an athlete
Yeah, of
asked like,
course.
"Hey, what happens if I interact with a judge or somebody on the water?" or that they stated that. But my understanding is it's not a conversation that happened, at least from this athlete's perspective.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
And
All
so
right.
picture wise, I do try to do my best to not show most things. Picture wise, that was just before Yellow Hosta was crossing. So
Yeah.
this next picture is of Yellow Host crossing. This picture is one of the first that comes from the 360 camera, so you can sort of get an idea of like where I was able to see and what I was able to doing. I was standing next to two people from the morning chalk up, and we were talking throughout the event through this. So um, but and then this is also when the context of the times, the official time chip, which you'll then see
Yeah.
70 plus times come through here through the middle, and that's just locking it too. And so the event did start at 7 o'clock, so you can look at this as sort of every time that's occurring is sort of within that 7 a.m. window. So 3650 for Yellow Hosta um, was within that window. One thing that isn't in this article, but I have had conversations that have come up is the water temperature. And so I have received from an athlete that the water temperature was between 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, which would equate to 86 degrees Fahrenheit to 87.8 degrees Fahrenheit. That's from an athlete's perspective. It was like a Garmin watch or something along those lines, I believe. But just wanted to call that out because it's not in the article, but it is something that came up since, and it's something that people have asked about because it does relate itself to, and again, we're CrossFit. We do things differently than everyone else. But when you look at like triathlons and things like that, and I do think those are apples and oranges. And the way I use that phrase is, hey, they're both fruit, they're both roundish shapes,
Right.
but they're not the same thing. So, within the same family, but not the same thing. So, when it comes to that, that's a single temperature from a watch throughout the swim, but it's not what CrossFit tested that morning. On that same topic, I'll just go on a run here for a second. I also have emails between the city and the event coordinator and CrossFit. There's conversations that that testing did occur or was planned to occur. It sounds like it did from conversations I also then had with event staff that morning before the event occurred. Um, they were testing for algae and all that sort of old stuff. They were testing the temperatures. Everything was a-okay as far as I was told that early that morning. Um, I don't know the testing methods or how that happened or anything like that. I'll tell you a funny story of those emails, though. There is also a conversation about validating that there's no alligators in the lakes. So
that's fair in the South.
the city or the Tarrant County water whoever they are, they also had to answer an email that was, "Hey, there's no alligators in the lakes right
Yeah,
now." So
look, that's a fair concern. I grew up in the South and I fish reservoirs and lakes many times, and I've come up across many alligators in my life. So
not this lake,
I would not
no
want to be
alligators.
swimming in it and worried about that. So let's jump
Hmm.
forward a little bit. I'm curious about this part because this is when you had a spectator jumped in the water at
Yes.
7:38, and you obviously you're right there
Mhm.
taking photos. Was that
Did
something
not
that
notice.
yeah, I was going to
No,
ask? Was anyone noticing? I mean, it certainly didn't come up on the broadcast.
no. Well, there's a good amount of stories that I've received from the people on that side that back up that obviously it occurred and the person's there and all that sort of stuff. There, throughout this process, you're going to see this quite a few times. And you're going to see this especially when it gets into the time chip conversations that happen. The day was a blur, and there's things that are happening 20 feet in front of you in this case, maybe that's 30, 40 feet away, that just no one saw. So, and there's things where conversations start to happen and then they finish and then they don't get resolved, and that happens throughout the process. So that is a piece of this, is that there's seemingly things that get brought up, things that happen that are like, hey, that was odd, right? And then things that just don't get resolved. And I don't
Right.
put that on any one person because it happened to me and it happened to the people beside me of like, and there's a piece in here where somebody goes like, hey, where's Lazar? And then it's just like, oh wow, so and so did pretty well, huh? So like that's happening. But in this scenario, I do have, yes, Jessica Smith, who's the, again, I don't want to say family wrong, but I believe that's the daughter of Shannon Medeiros. And then her boyfriend's also in here, and then Shanna's also in here. And I have their perspective on this specific occurrence. I did also catch it on the camera that I had sort of static here. And that there were people on the other side of the lake that I talked to later that did see it happen, but it wasn't like a be all
Right.
end all event of like, hey, somebody's in the lake. In conversations with people around it, it was seen more to the effect of like a streaker, where it's like, hey, somebody's jumping in the lake. Hey, what are we going to do about this guy that's jumped in the lake?
Yeah,
And
this
that's
whole part of this though
that's
is
the perspective.
really intriguing and shocking and heartbreaking. Even reading it this afternoon, if I compare, like the part that was amazing to me was there, Jessica, who I don't know any of these people by the way at all, but
Mhm.
from the
Yeah.
statements that she saw it happening and said to, I'm assuming it's her boyfriend, this Chris Gomer,
Mhm.
go.
Mhm.
And like,
Yep.
God bless first responders, man. Like, seriously.
Mm.
I mean, I'm getting emotional thinking about it now. Like, there are two types of people in the world, those that run into danger and those that run away from it. And this dude went right in the water without even thinking about it. Like, that's really, it's just unreal to me, to think that he'd put himself in
Yeah.
harm's way to do this and then to get turned away, even more so.
Yeah.
So,
So let's talk about turned away. So that I think the focus was this person's in the water and they shouldn't be in the water.
yeah. Oh,
And
yeah,
it
of course.
And
Yeah.
that's obviously a perspective that people are going to have immediately in the
Yeah.
moment. Like if somebody jumped in on the 5K run last year, you'd be like, "Whoa, where'd that person come from? They shouldn't be there." So on and so on. That Chris does speak to that he communicated to the medic on the paddle board. I That's what's in this article is what my understanding of the events. So I'm not going to try to say one further or anything along those lines, or put any words in any mouths or any assumptions in anybody's actions. Um, what I would sort of move to is then the next thing that occurs with the same person, is if you scroll down, and at 7:38 there is an interaction where somebody does ask like out loud, where is Lazar? So it's just sort of
Yeah.
speaking to that. Adrian was actually looking for Larry Moss. Larry Moss is the MC.
Right. So there's
He was
Chris in
calling
the
out
water here
names, and
next to the
yeah,
paddleboard,
so
right?
that's the
Yeah.
person in the water. That's really more or less the interaction point. I would say. From this point, the Chris who's in the water then turns around and swims back, and that's also in there. If you keep going, is Chris's version of that same story, which does obviously align with Jessica's
Right.
and the babe go part and things like that. Um, so he is turned away. He's told to get out of the water. He's asked who it is that went under, and that's obviously anyone in any
Yeah, and they wouldn't
situation is
know.
going to ask weird
Yeah.
things, but like people aren't going to know, but they're just going to point in the direction that it happens, and then he gets out of the water. The next thing that happens from here that I can see on the video is that the paddleboarder then moves to intercept a swimmer that is going perpendicular to the finish line. Um, and the swimmer was Jeff Adler, just based on um, who I can then see come out of the water after that interaction point. So there you can see the same medic then goes over to Jeff Adler. Jeff Adler's, if you see where that is and sort of think about where that would be zoomed out from, this is the right side of the arch. So Jeff is far off from where he's supposed to be, and then the paddleboarder goes and sort of shepherds him back in to where he's supposed to be.
How far off
Um,
was Jeff off course? He was a pretty significant distance, right?
yeah, so it was a few weeks ago. It was right after the games, but Chris Hinshaw did a podcast. I haven't seen Jeff's actual like Garmin or whatever that might be. I don't know what he was using, but like he had within Chris Hinshaw's statement, there is like stating that he went off course more than once, and that he had to be pulled back in, and he ran into a paddleboarder even at some point. I
Yeah.
think was in that statement. Um, I don't know that that was this, but this obviously does happen where the paddleboarder then meets up with him. Just for context, for the next part, this is when Justin Medeiros crosses right around exactly 40 minutes into the event. Um,
Well, you can get a good sense
okay,
of how far off course he was and how wide this
yeah,
course was for all the swimmers, just based off of this photo that you have, and then if you circle it back to the one where he's in the water here, you've got, I think that's Chris in the water,
yeah,
and just the visual distance is pretty significant. It's pretty
yeah,
nuts.
yeah. So, and he's not the only one. Pat Vellner then will show up later in the timeline doing the same thing. So one piece is to that is there a concern around the buoy suggestions or the buoy requirements of where you needed to be in reference to the buoys, and then how athletes were being sort of shepherded in to those areas? Because then if athletes are just told go from A to B or B to C or whatever it might be, then the entire span of the lake is available for them to swim. Should they be swimming in those directions? Probably not. It's not the most direct option, but it's available to them. And then people do have to intercept at some point to then lead them back in. So that is something that I try to point out here is um okay, there's just a comment here real quick. Garmin GPS watches work perfectly fine in the water. They connect to the GPS location every single time the hand comes out of the water. Making statements like that does not help anybody. It's just how the Garmin's work. Like it's a bit ridiculous to try to talk bad about somebody because you don't understand how watches and GPS works. So anyway, so then it keeps going. So that is just a piece of what sort of string together here. If athletes are told just to go from A to B or B to C or whatever it might be,
Sure.
they then have the full span of the water. They then can really go wherever they want. That does put a concern around corralling athletes, like can go anywhere they want. That means that anyone monitoring them has to watch anywhere and everywhere. So
Well, at this point in the race, though, people are starting to realize that Lazar hasn't crossed the finish line. So we're at 7:40, and they're looking for him.
mhm.
And it sounds like Larry, who, by the way, is, if anyone knows Larry, the
He's
guy
great.
is a total pro, like as
Yeah.
good as they come. But sounds like he made a mistake and said that Lazar crossed when it was actually his brother Luca,
Yeah.
which
So that is also on
created
here.
some confusion, obviously.
Yeah, and there is a video clip of that comes from the 360 video that I have. You don't need to click on it. People can
Sure.
watch it. But it really is just that. He says Lazar's name. There's a few of us that sort of look towards Luca. He then, I think, probably sees him himself. I don't want to put thoughts or words into somebody's mouth, but he then says Luca's name,
Right.
crosses. From there is a conversation that I have with Brian Friend. Brian Friend then brings up that Lazar was in second place. He hasn't seen him yet. And then that's really, I don't know how long we've been going, maybe, oh, wow, an hour. But like, that's where then the timeline just starts to sort of speed up quite a bit, or at least it's another 20 minutes of timeline here, but it's really the same sort of thing occurring over and over and over again. And what that thing is, well, and there you can see the lifeguard then trying to follow and move in Pat Vellner.
Yeah.
And what that thing is people are coming across the finish line. Luca has interactions with different people involved with CrossFit, and there's different statements of we have his time chip, he crossed, and that's continuing to occur. There were two, I might be jumping here, but there were two time chips that were just not found. Henrik Haapalainen came in without a time chip on him, so that one was missing. And then there was also Lazar's. So, and again, I don't know the details here, so I won't speak to them. There is a thought that there's two El Jukic's. How that looks and when the time chips come up, or how that looks when things are reviewed, could be confusing to some that could do that. But again, I was even having conversations where it was like, oh yeah, where is he? That's crazy. And then it would be, oh, Amy Kringle's crossing. I just pulled her name out of what's on the
Right.
screen there, but like that thing definitely was occurring. What also starts to occur is more people are going down to the water. So you can just see this start to build as more people are moving between what is sort of the athlete area, that CrossFit tent right
Right.
behind there. And that would be Luca and Adrian Bosman talking around 47 minutes in. So that's starting to happen as well. And again, I don't know these conversations. I don't have a omnipresent camera or anything like that.
Sure.
But these continue to happen. And then also to just call out for the timeline, I do also pull in athletes that came across and they gave public statements on their Instagram or in different places about what their sort of interactions were with the event.
Yeah. So just to speed it along, so once we've reached like kind of it looks like almost 7:50. It looks like everyone is starting to realize that he's missing, and things are getting like you've got statements here from Justin talking about his mom being
Mhm.
and his sister being hysterical. Those are his words, by the way, not mine.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. I'm not
But
trying to
but
pin
they obviously would be if they had seen
anything.
what they had just seen, and
Mhm.
it sounds like things were starting to move very
Yeah.
quickly toward
Yeah. And I'll just pause
kind of
you on
turning
that
things around.
moment because there is a moment that I would think even Shanna would represented well is that she states in there to whoever she's talking to on the CrossFit side, I'm not leaving here until you tell me that every person has come in. She is already aware that it's not her son, which was, I think, maybe sort of felt, or obviously, at least in that moment, her son hadn't crossed yet when she saw what she saw. She had already seen her son at that point. Her son then goes, her son, who's 2 times champion, Justin Medeiros, also goes and talks to somebody. The person that Justin talks to says, yes, I'm aware of what you're talking about. That person came back up. They were trying to get their swim cap to something along those lines. That's from Justin's video. That's not something that was came out after or during the process of making this. Um, so and then she is told back from somebody at CrossFit, yes, all the men are accounted for. So there is this process where the same sort of message is continued. I don't know the genesis of that message and how then it sort of continued, but I can just say that it did continue quite a few times. Obviously, Luca brings up, which is pictured around here, when Luca and the family talked to Dave, is that's what Dave also told them. Um,
So let me stop you for a second and ask. So now we're at a point where obviously everyone knows something's going wrong. And from your firsthand account, like at what point did you realize they were moving into emergency mode or panic mode? I don't know
Great
what the right
question.
term
I
is
don't.
there.
Yeah, I know what you mean, or I think I know what you mean. Um,
I mean, did they seem to be moving
Slightly
more
before
urgently to
Kyra
look for
Milligan.
someone, or no?
Well, sort of in two ways, because I don't know the process in which all of the lifeguards that you saw in the water in one of the initial pictures of what their process was as they're sort of tracking with all of the swimmers. But you do see all of them start to come into the bay, but that's at the same time that the final athletes are crossing. So Kyra Milligan was the last athlete to come in from the swim. Um, she doesn't finish until 57 minutes in, which would have been again around 7:57. Um, so that's when you really start to see people come in, and that's when more people are down at the finish line area, and there's conversations being had amongst them. So in this picture that you see on there for anybody watching, this is when Lazar then went and talked to the head judges, and then that interaction turns into an interaction with Dave Castro, and then um, in Luca's version of this also comes up because Luca states that he was told that Lazar was number 27, that his time chip did come in. I'm paraphrasing here at best. And then Luca goes in over to the cold tubs, and he's seen over there, and I've seen some videos of him over there, and it's seemingly like he's hanging out in the cold tubs, which for anybody just watching, it seems like it. Well, it's a cold tube. I don't want to use a pun here, but it cooled down quite a bit. Um, that then changes right around here when the head judge then comes and asks back to where he thought the family still was, where's the family? And then shortly after this moment, which is 7:54, that's when Luca is then seen leaving the cold tub area and coming back down here again, which is then turns into um, then what you start to see is that there's more paddle boards in the water. There's more the two jet skis are in the water. There's boats in the water, and then there's more and more event staff that is collecting at the shoreline.
It's just really interesting to me that they had so many people. I mean, according to your timeline, we'll call it 7:40 to 7:45, saying, "Hey, someone went under," and they waited for the last swimmer to get out before, if I'm reading it right, that before they actively started searching. Is that correct?
And again, I at this moment here, this is 7:54. Like I think the last swimmer is Kyra Milligan. That's at 7:57. If you just scroll down, you can scroll right back up. But
Sure.
uh,
Yep.
there she is. 7:56 or 7:57. So within those few minutes, yes. But that's also when the last person got out of the water. So you can sort of see it two ways, obviously, right? Like, did they wait for everybody to get out of the water? Or is that the moment that it was sort of fully realized? And that's when they told the family, hey, wait, we don't have his time chip, which is what I think is based around Luca's statement and then what I understand. And that's when it like ramps up. I do know that the call to the police or the emergency services is just after 8 p.m. So that then also puts sort of a timeline around what then happens from there. And then the story that it is, I'm asked very nicely to move away from the area around 8:03. So that's when my camera cuts off, and then from there it's really just or I'm sorry, EMT and sort of diver statements, things like that, that then occur because um, there's not much else to say. We're dispersed at that point. I think David Schronke and a few other people assist with a search prior to the team being there. Um, that's based on his statement and my understanding and conversations I've had with him. But and then just to say here, the team's event during those same moments, they were still only delaying the team's event. That did occur. So the team's event, I think, was supposed to start at 8. It was moved to 8:05. It was then moved to 8:10. It was then canceled shortly thereafter that.
And,
So,
and for the record, I wasn't asking the question about the delayed search as judgment.
oh,
More it was
okay.
more along the lines of it highlights the confusion, because to your point, at that point, and we're watching the broadcast, waiting for teams to start. And of course I was texting with Joe, who was on site with you, and Sean, who was at home. And if there was kind of the same level of confusion when you were watching it on TV. Like, we knew someone was missing, but we thought maybe they had just swam to the shore, had gotten lost.
Right.
And, we're all like kind of hoping the best, thinking, all right, well, they're going to start teams soon. And so, I think it obviously just highlights the massive confusion in kind of a 15-minute window, which is a really tight window of time to figure things out. So it's just really interesting to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know that I took it that way originally. I was just trying to maybe make sure that it was stated is that, yeah,
I wasn't worried about you, Mike. I was worried about
it's
people listening to my comment. It wasn't you I was worried about.
Sure. I'm worried about the same. Or I can say whatever I want. They can take it however they want. But this
So at this
interaction
point, they
point
call
is
the
really
cops,
that's
right?
ATP,
8
the
o'clock.
coaches, then the police do show up.
Right.
One thing here, I'll say it. I don't recall seeing any uniformed emergency services or ambulances or anything on site prior to 8 a.m. So, as far as medical goes, as far as that goes, I just don't recall it. So, I mean, I could immediately be told there was an ambulance sitting right in front of you, you're blind, but I don't recall seeing any of that. So, the incident reports that come, there was then emergency services. There was then a fire truck. There was then all of that. The two bike cops on scene, I believe, came actually from just reading the police report. There was an interaction between the Fort Worth police. There's actually a college campus that's right next to this. So there was then emergency services on scene very quickly thereafter that. And then there's a period of time in which those show up, then divers show up, and then they put more boats in the water, and then sort of you can imagine what happens after that.
A couple of questions about the timeline, and someone had DM'd some questions here, but there was one about his chip timer and telling that they told Luca that Lazar's chip timer had crossed. And the question was, do you think that did it feel like a genuine mistake on site when it happened because of, Larry calling someone else's name, or was it just kind of heat of the moment? Oh yeah, we got him. Like, do you have any sense of what that was?
That starts to get into intent, where I'd be very iffy about trying to diagnose intent.
I'm not looking for intent as much as I am
can
like the
speak
heat
to
of the
the other
moment.
side of it, though. Yeah, I can speak to the other side of it. There was a lot of general confusion. There was a lot of, this is like a 0.01% scenario that no one really wanted to imagine, and there was a wave sort of thereafter. I feel this. I've had conversations with other people that feel this, so I can't speak to every single person that was there. But there was a wave sort of realization of like, oh, this scenario happened. I think there's possibilities in which time chips get confusing or things like that. And I think there's also, yes, misunderstandings or whatever might happen there. I can't speak to the intent of anyone's words or the thoughts that they had or the
I'm not looking
understandings.
for intent, and I'm
Yeah.
not trying to assign blame or any of that. Someone said in the comments, it's not intent, it's context, and that's what I'm looking for. Like, there's clearly, a moment of intense confusion and anxiety for everyone,
Yes.
which is why this timeline is so important, because it reins in what actually happened. But I think there is a narrative there of, was it so crazy that everyone's like, yeah, we got it, or was it different than that? That's kind of the point. It's okay to not speculate if you don't have it. I'm just trying to add context.
I mean, you can see it from this timeline. There's 20 minutes of where is he until the police are called.
Well, you mentioned not seeing an ambulance, but bluntly, I would have been surprised to see an ambulance there. I mean, I've been to half a dozen CrossFit games at this point, and they have so many medical so much medical staff on site, I'm not sure I would fault them for not having an ambulance on site when you've got, a dozen MDs like right there. Again, I don't know what the procedure is there, but
I don't know.
it doesn't surprise me that it
There's
wasn't there. Is my point.
that would be something that would be answered with the emergency action plan. Yeah.
Well, I have other questions for you, but I want to point out on the website for people as they go to it, you've got some really good links here to the documents obtained from the Freedom of Information Act, which tells what the dive team did. We're not going to get into that here. And I'm going to just warn anybody that goes to read it. It can be distressing and not an easy read, to say the least, but it is important information. So you can get a chance to see that. If you want to go look at the permit that CrossFit had, as well as their liability insurance, and then obviously the document that CrossFit signed with Fort Worth, you have all that as well. So it's really good stuff. Any blowback you've had from writing this article?
Oh, the article itself, no.
The actual question I got was, how aggressively has the cult been coming at him? Which I thought was funny because I always refer to CrossFit as a cult. And I'm part of that cult, I might add.
That's who that cult is? Zero? I don't know. I think I haven't received acknowledgement from anybody from CrossFit.
I saw quite a few comments when Morning Chalk Up shared it. People kind of blowing at you initially.
Sure. Like, as far as that goes, I think that's understandable. I think there's plenty of concern of some unknown person, and I think that's where I would categorize myself, jumping in seemingly with a lot of information suddenly that has no relationship to the family and has no relationship to CrossFit HQ, and then is stating these things. And then there's a lot of people that would then use that to read between the lines and say, well, why is he stating these things?
Yep.
I can say that I have the vantage point, I had the information, and I'm sharing it. I don't have any reason one way or the other. This does not help me at all, either side of it. But I had the information I believed it should have been shared. With that, I see this thing that comes up is CrossFit's observable, measurable, repeatable, right? Like, there should be things where it's like people saw what they saw. They measured the time that it took to do things. And there's questions into then what happens from there. There's an investigation that's going on, and I've provided all of this information to the investigation. So there's nothing where I'm trying to subside them, or not subside them, but there's nothing where I'm trying to minimize or jump in the middle of that. I'm trying to provide that publicly and understand that can then lead to concerns of why somebody's releasing this all publicly.
Let's take some questions from the live chat. I'm going to address one right at the top. We're 45 minutes in. What do we uncover that we didn't already know? Absolutely nothing, Barry. It wasn't the point of this episode. Well, the point of this episode was this. I mentioned and then I'm going to give you some questions, Mike. But the point of the episode was this. The one thing that I've learned, particularly over the last couple of weeks, as I've been doing more episodes, solo episodes, and obviously watching a lot of things shared online, is the bulk of this community is doing a really piss poor job of actually getting the details. They'll read the first headline and form an opinion, or they'll watch the first 2 minutes of a show, whether it's mine, Hiller's, Savan, Talking Elite Fitness, you name it, and form an opinion without watching the full context. And so the point of this was to give everyone an opportunity to hear directly from Mike around what was the timeline and have an understanding where the site was. It wasn't really to uncover new information, although I have some questions for you to get that. So that was kind of the point of giving people the opportunity to hear it firsthand, and then, have a few questions in the chat. CrossFit says, is the site itself monetized? Your site's not monetized, correct?
0.
Yeah. Mine is, for the record.
Honestly, so if that helps at all, CrossFit.
Well, I will say this. My YouTube channel is monetized, but as I committed at the beginning of August, every penny I earned in August is being donated to Lazarus family, and I'm actually personally matching it. So it's probably going to end up being about $2,000 when it's all said and done. I haven't gotten paid yet, but when they cut me the check, I'll match it. So that answers any questions about monetization.
The same goes to my Instagram, if that's a question. I don't know how to even do that, but it's not monetized. And then that also then speaks to, and I'll just go on further about the monetization. That was a conversation that I had with the Morning Chalk Up of I am not paid actually by the Morning Chalk Up for this article, if anyone really cares. This article is just releasing free information to everyone. So I'm not making a dime. It's costing me money actually to do this. And then it's not on their website. So there is no ads there either. The only place it shows up is on Instagram, which they've collabed on, which is also my post. Right. So if they have monetization on their side, I can't speak to that, but it's my post. I could take it down if I wanted to.
How about this question from Jeffrey Birchfield? Have you completed a request of information for the autopsy? That's available online, right? I mean,
it's not available yet.
I mean, it's pending, but you can just simply look it up online if you wanted it,
right?
So
you knew where to look, the Tarrant County. Yeah, the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's site is publicly available. I think I regret doing this. I'll say that publicly. I regret posting the link to the Tarrant County website. But at that time, there was also people that were speculating about why or how he died. And I was just showing that it's still pending. So therefore, there is not an answer. Somebody shouldn't be filling in the gap with an answer. That being said, it is available publicly online. And if you'd like to really see it, I could send you a link to it. But it's a Google search away.
Yeah, I mean, those that have the link to that, like I know Joe, Morning Chalk Up, they've been, kind of waiting for it to come out. I'm not sure it's going to tell us anything that we don't already know. As a matter of fact, I had a message tonight prior to this from a doctor. I'll read it to you just because I thought it was interesting because it applies to the autopsy of what people suspect will happen. This was a PhD, MD, said kind of the experts talk about a shallow water blackout is what they were speculating that we'll see come from this. And so I think we could see. And so the point isn't that I think that happened. It's that it could be anything. I think what's interesting to me is just kind of your timeline and the facts of what happened and really having an understanding of what the safety plan looked like, what the course was, how it went down is important for people to understand, to have better context. So when we get the autopsy, it'll help everyone, including this third-party investigation, have a true understanding of what happened end to end, which is all we're trying to get to when it's all said and done. So we never beat ourselves.
Yeah. I just want facts and truth. I'm not going to speculate. But I'm not saying that you are trying to. I'm just saying that there's a lot of things where people ask why this is happening. They ask why we've been going for an hour and a half and there hasn't been anything that they haven't learned yet, because there's a lot of people that seemingly just want to live in the fact that an investigation may happen and an investigation may actually be given out publicly. It doesn't have to be. CrossFit owns that investigation. I'm optimistic, honestly, about it. And I don't know the investigator, but I know the Department of Homeland Security and have worked with them before. And they're pretty good at their jobs, regardless of how people feel about government employees. So, I can only imagine that it will go well.
I'm not optimistic. We're going to be on two different sides of the fence on this.
Sure, that's fine.
At all. But I've worked in corporate America for years, and corporate America is going to give you what they're required to give you, not what we want them to give us. And I think there's a snowball's chance in hell we see this transparent investigation when it's done. But again, Don could surprise me, but I don't have any hopes that that's going to happen. So we'll see.
There's a question on why I regret posting the link to the medical examiner's page. It was just really bad timing. It wasn't needed in the time to be stated of where to go find it or whatever else.
No pushback from HQ, cease and desist, none of that. Someone had a question for you on that. None at all. They
It
haven't
might
given
take
you
lawyers more than a week to figure that out, but no, I haven't gotten it.
any calls from HQ, any questions from them at all?
Have not acknowledged it, and that's probably I don't want
Okay.
to.
Interesting.
How many questions are not about the lake that are in
What's
the
that?
chat? Is there a lot of questions not about the lake that's in the chat?
No, I think that's about it. I mean, you clear up everything I wanted to hear, Mike. So I appreciate you jumping on to do it. I mean, again, the goal of the podcast tonight wasn't to uncover new information as much as it was to clear up what others have either not found the time to actually read, or I wanted people to hear directly from you. Kind of how you gathered the information. I think that's a question that people don't know you as well as they might know a Hiller or whoever, and so it's important for them to have a sense of who you are and how you gathered the info. And I just I appreciate your analytical mind and how nerdy you are, because I fall into that same gap often, and the diligence it takes to piece together this timeline is difficult. And so I know that was super time consuming for you, so I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's taken a little while to get here. Like I said, I am optimistic about the investigation. I've shared all of that I have with them. As far as responses from HQ, I haven't received those. I haven't actually received responses from the investigation, but I only sent them the information last week, and I can't imagine the flood of whoever's reaching out to them. So more power to them.
I hope you're right. I mean, I'll be honest. Like I have a lot of respect for those at HQ. I like them personally, but I work in big. I run a business bigger than CrossFit, and I work for a corporation far bigger than CrossFit, and I understand how corporations work. And I will be flabbergasted if they release it. I will be absolutely shocked. But I've been surprised before. CrossFit seems to have a way of surprising me about every 2 or 3 months. So we'll see. Here's another question while we're kind of wrapping up here.
I just saw that one.
Do you expect to ever get credentials at the games again?
I appreciate the availability that they gave me to the 2024 games. I don't honestly know.
Would you ask for them again?
Yeah. So I'll just say, because my daughter's a senior in high school. We can talk more maybe personally now. My daughter's a senior in high school, so we're living out her senior year here. I'm not going to Waterplease or Tier Cup, but I will have 2 photographers there. I'm not going to Rogue Invitational, but I will have at least 1 photographer there. There's other competitions that are coming up that we'll likely be covering and things along those lines. So that's all true. I won't know till June of next year if I'm invited or not to a CrossFit event, unless obviously I suddenly do get some responses or something from CrossFit. I did try my best and vetted this so many times with so many people that were aware of things to make sure that I was giving, to the best of my ability, an objective timeline of this. I think everyone has their opinion and their right to an opinion. This is not an opinion article. So, there you go. This is not an opinion article. This is vetted statements. This is video-based timelines and things that occurred within that video that could then be backed up. And I have gotten this question. That video in full would never see the light of day. It can be shared with certain individuals if they request it. And I have obviously full control over who those people are. Or I don't have control over who those people are, but I have the control to say yes or no. So that is, as far as end goals go, I am trying to put out facts of what occurred during those moments, because I think there was a few hundred people at the lake, and there was hundreds. Well, now there is hundreds, millions of people that are aware of this event, but there was thousands watching it online, and there seemingly was a harsh disconnect. Even if you were watching the whole stream, even if you were texting with people on the sideline, even if all of that is true, there was a large disconnect between being there, being in the scenarios, and that's what I'm trying to give in the most objective way possible, and not have it be, oh, Mike just feels this way about this person, or Mike just has this about this. I think, and this goes to some things I have seen on the side of the chat, I think there's scenarios where I've said wrong things before. Crazy.
Yeah, of course.
So like, I hope that in those scenarios, that isn't painting a picture about a timeline that has been vetted and no one has denied anything that's happened within that timeline. So when it comes to Hiller or Taylor or Savan, or name whoever you want that's come up in this chat, I didn't see Savan in there, honestly, but there are things that we've had interactions point that have not gone well. In some of those cases, there's been obviously good conversations, and those haven't shined through here at all. But that, I don't know. I honestly don't know the scenario in which personal conversations or personal things that happen with two people need to be aired out publicly to thousands, and then have people have to weigh in about two people that they haven't ever met in their real life. So that's my feeling about most of those things, that if either one of those people would like to talk to me directly about what the conversations that we had were or how that works, I'd be happy to do that if they're actually trying to move towards any reconciliation piece. If they have a feeling about me that is just, I don't like him and I don't like how he works and I don't like what he does, I have no control over such a thing. But I would just state, I'm available if you want to have those conversations. I'm putting information out there in this case, and I do not plan. I saw Taylor put it. I've never stated actually that I would share all of our text messages. And then whatever else he stated, I don't know. But that was a bad conversation in which we had, and I'm not trying to air it here, but it all happened in Instagram comments, honestly. Was he said something happened within the conversation. I said it didn't. I said I had the conversation still. That did not mean that I was trying to share the conversation out loud to everyone. There you go to the chat that was interested in that part of the scenario, if you've waited 2 hours or an hour and a half. But again, that being said, they can come talk to me if they'd like. I don't understand why 20 or
I don't know
2,000
anything about all the
people would
drama. I got my
come
own
talk to me.
drama, buddy. Like, so
I know.
I don't know anything about your drama.
And sorry to
but
air it on your channel.
No,
Again,
it's fine.
not my focus.
I do appreciate though that you put together the timeline for us. I think that's important. We're going to kind of end on this. I thought CrossFit and I have the same opinion that you have more faith in government and CrossFit than both of us do, and you believe in GPS more than I do too. So I learned that about you tonight. So that's good to know. Mine is always just complaining about my GPS.
Sorry, CrossFit, to lay into you at all. Again, this does get a little heated. I was reading your comment next to quite a few others that were much more pointed than yours was. I was just trying to state that there's.
We didn't invite any of the drama into the chat. The only point of tonight was just to get a better understanding of the timeline and how it got put together. And, I just appreciate the thoroughness of it.
Thank you, Ortega.
I think, those that take the time to read it and kind of dig into it, appreciate that as well. So thank you for doing that for the community. I think you will get a press pass again in the future if you want one, assuming the games go on, but I guess we'll see.
Oh, well. So hey, he said that, not me. I would love a press pass at the next CrossFit Games.
Yeah. Hey, I think you'll get one. I think you do great work. So appreciate you being on.
Thank you, sir.
So, all right, for everyone that joined us tonight, thank you so much. And I'll see you guys later in the week. Take care.